Hey there, and welcome to the UkeStuff channel, and welcome to this UkeGuide review of the Bugsgear Soprano Aqualele. It's been around since at least 2016. I think it was a response to the Cala Waterman that came out in 2015. And it is a different approach to a plastic ukulele. Still all ABS, it's a little bit deeper than your Waterman and certainly styled a little differently as well. So what we're going to do in this UkeGuide review is, first of all, we're going to look at subjective issues that I look at with all instruments. Then we're going to take a look at the specifications, and then I will close out with a summary and, of course, the UkeGuide rating. If you are ever interested in getting the printed version of this, I do put a PDF, one-page summary of the UkeGuide, both on the normal ukestuff.info channel or ukeguide.info as a shortcut as well. All right, let's get into the subjective issues. And the cost of these right now is $50. I think it's $49.50. And right now, as I look, this is March 2021. Only the orange one is available. That changes from time to time to time. So I don't know if these are still in production or if they're coming from a warehouse or what it may be. But at the moment, they're not all available. And we'll get to that with availability a little bit later. So $49.50. This one I did not spend that much for. This, I believe, is an open box model, and I bought it for $24 off of Amazon last fall. It's been a while since I've gotten around to review this one. Now I've talked about cost, let's talk about value. So with this, you get a plastic ukulele with metal geared tuners. Sometimes people are worried about plastic ones. And you get a pretty decent gig bag. And in fact, of all the ABS ukuleles that are out there, it's probably the best gig bag. Now, if you want to say that the Enya gig bag for the Nova is better, that's fine, but that's at yet a different price point. But in terms of all the other sort of ABS ukuleles, that's really about as good as you can get. It's a thin padded bag, about 3 millimeters, and that would be all that you'd ever need for an ukulele like this versus, for example, Cala's drawstring bag or the Camis drawstring bag that comes with their plastic ukuleles, or the Vorzen that I recently reviewed that it comes with no bag. So with that in mind, it's nice that that comes with it. The negative side, however, is the price. So right now these are selling for $50. As I mentioned, I bought this one quite a while ago, last fall, for $24. And I believe this was an open box, but the prices do go up or down. Right now at $49.50, I'm not sure I would pay that for this, because for a few dollars more, you can get into a really decent starter ukulele. But if you're looking for a plastic ukulele, I think I would send you somewhere else as well at that price point, because there are instruments that play just as well and sound a little bit better, I think, for less money than this. So the value of this instrument just isn't there. The price is greater than the value at $49.50. All right, let's talk about the build quality. It is a plastic ukulele that's glued together, so realistically, there's not a whole lot you're going to be able to say here. It's going to be pretty standard. Most of it is pretty good, but there are some rough edges. I mean, you can actually feel the seams, and right up here on the fretboard, there is some sharpness. It's not a sharpness that's going to cut you, but it's rough, and it's where the joint is, and I don't even know if you'll be able to see it in the camera, but where this blue part runs into the neck up here and the fretboard up here, that is not perfectly smooth. So that's kind of a negative on the instrument, because you would hope that a plastic ukulele would be perfectly smooth and just seamless, especially after it's glued together. So that is the one build quality concern that I would have. Now let's take a look on the inside. There's not a whole lot to see with ABS black plastic, but let's go take a look. All right, let's take a look inside the Bugsgear Aqualele. All right, looking at the back, we've got a lot of glare from the light reflecting off of the black plastic. But as we scroll around, you can see the supports on the side. You can see that there are braces on the bottom, and that there are braces, if I can get the right angle, on the top as well. Try to get closer to the bridge down here and just take a look at what's going on there. There is your extra bridge support there, and you can see the strings poking through. I am not sure what those little round discs are there. Maybe some sort of support that the bridge clips into or something. You can see that there's some extra support. It's not really a tail block, but there's a little bit of extra support on the bottom end of the ukulele. And that's pretty much all that you're looking at. Let's take a look at the upper bout. All right, there's not a lot of operating room here, so I can just let you see where the top piece is glued in. And this is where that round cutout is. And as we scroll around over here, you just see again an injection mold port, another one of the little braces that helps keep the top aligned when they're gluing it on. And that's pretty much all there is to see. You can see some of the braces on the bottom. So that's our quick look at the inside of the Bugsgear Aqualele. All right, let's talk about the appearance now. It is an interesting looking ukulele, and the real negative here is that it really does look like a toy because of the color schemes, as do the other Bugsgear concert version that's out there. And I have not reviewed the concert version yet. I hope to in the future. But it really does look rather toyish with the colors, unfortunately, whereas this is way more functional, for example, than the Waterman. They've tried to do some different things here. So you have an offset sound hole, you have a rosette, you've got this stylized fretboard, and you've got a really deep body. So I really applaud the attempt to do something different. Just for some reason, it comes off looking more like a toy than a Waterman or even the older Macaferris. It just does. It looks toy-like. Now, in terms of playability, the action on here is actually really good. So the string height over the fretboard is pretty much ideal for what I'd be looking for. However, the nut is smaller than 35 millimeters, and the string spacing is really tight. Really tight. So it is harder to play than it needs to be. I actually have a Sopranissimo from Ohana that's easier to play than this one is because of the string spacing. And that's really my big concern of playability. The neck is C-shaped, and if the neck were a little bit wider, so the neck matches the fretboard, but if the neck were a little bit wider, you'd really feel the C-shape. But since the neck is so narrow, the actual depth of the neck feels shallow when it's really not. So it's a standard C-shaped neck. So in summary, again, of playability, it is a C-shaped neck with a very good action, yet narrow nut and narrow string spacing on the instrument, making it harder to play. All right, now let's talk about sound quality. Ultimately, it's not bad, but I also won't go to say that it's good either. It lacks sparkle. It lacks that brightness that I like. It's not awful, but you hear that it's a plastic ukulele, which you would expect. But the sustain is in the mid and lower notes. So it really lacks the sparkle of even some other plastic ukuleles that I have. So I'm not a huge fan of the sound of the instrument. It's loud enough, it's not super loud. There is some sustain, but overall it's sort of a darker sounding instrument than a brighter sounding instrument. Now, if you like dark sounding instruments, this actually might be a great option for a plastic ukulele for you. One of the things I like to do is let you see what I'm hearing. So what I'll be doing is playing the C chord into an app called Tonal Energy Tuner, and I'll let you see both what happens when I strum the chord and what's happening with the sustain. Here we go. What's really evident to me is how the sustain is really in the middle to low end of the instrument. And for the record, the sustain is holding on longer to my ears than the iPad is picking up. Now that we've talked about the subjective issues of the instrument, let's go into the specifications of the instrument. It is a soprano ukulele. The scale length is 13.75 inches, which is a little bit longer, just a bit, than usual. Now there are 18 frets on the fretboard. There are 12 to the body, 14 full frets, and then the last 4 are partial frets across that you could then play on your first string only. There are front marker dots, although they're almost impossible to see. They're actually molded into the ABS. If I can get that in the light in the right spot. Let's see, there's one. And then there are side position markers. I'm not sure how long those will hold on. The body shape is a traditional double bout, even though the sound hole is offset with a cutaway. The soundboard and body are all made of ABS plastic. That also goes for the fretboard and the bridge. The only thing that isn't ABS plastic, of course, are the strings and the tuning gears. The bridge is really a slotted bridge, so you tie a knot and you just kind of put it into that hole on the side, so that'll be nice for people that are a little bit afraid to change strings. The fretboard is not radius, straight across, and the saddle is not compensated. It is a flat finish on the plastic rather than a shiny gloss finish. And the overall length is only 20.5 inches and it weighs 1 pound, 1 ounce. It does feel heavier than it is, partially because it's body heavy. So you really feel it in the body and it makes it feel heavier than it is. It has open geared tuners that are unbranded that work just fine. I will say this right here, if you're planning on buying this to get it wet, make sure that you oil these before and after you get out of the water or they will rust. I think you could replace them if you needed to. Nonetheless, try to avoid that, oil them beforehand. The action on the instrument is really quite good. It is 0.5 millimeters at the first fret and 2.75 millimeters at the 12th fret, which is completely acceptable for playing. The nut width is actually quite small. It's 33.45 millimeters, so significantly smaller than 34 millimeters, which is really tight, which makes for really tight string spacing on this one. It's only 7.70 millimeters between strings, which is only 26.57 millimeters G to A. That's getting pretty tight to have 4 strings and to make sure that your fingers can get everywhere where they need to go, especially if you're playing 4-finger chords like a diminished chord. It can be really tricky to get the clarity that you need with those notes. And then finally, as I've talked about earlier in the video, it is a C-shaped neck that feels flatter than it is mainly because of the thinness of, or the lack of width of the neck. It's actually a pretty standard C-shaped neck. It's not flattened out much at all. And at the 3rd fret, from the top of the strings to the bottom of the neck, it's 20.67 millimeters, which is on the smaller end. But again, if this neck was a little bit wider, which is the main thing that I would love to see with this instrument, quite honestly, is a little bit wider neck. If it was a wider neck, that C shape would be much more pronounced. So if they could keep those dimensions with a wider neck, that'd be awesome. All right, now that we've covered the subjective issues and the specifications, let's go into the summary. This is a plastic ukulele, and it's made out of ABS, and it does the job. It's okay. They tried to do some neat things with the styling, and again, they included metal geared tuners, which is nice, but it sort of misses the mark a little bit, looking more like a toy than it does a legitimate instrument. And it could be better. It has a really great setup, but a really narrow nut and a really narrow neck, making it harder to play than it needs to be. The sound is okay. It's not great. It's not my favorite, and it's part of the reason why, even though I've had this for months, I haven't picked it up very much. In fact, I even took it on a camping trip for one of our last camping trips in 2020, and I brought a couple of ukuleles, and I hardly even touched this one at the time. It's just not as enjoyable to play as many of my other ukuleles. So is it bad? No. If you buy one, is there something wrong? No. It's perfectly passable as an ukulele. It just isn't one that I gravitate towards. And again, these UkeGuide ratings are based on my opinion. So as I look at ukuleles, I give them a rating between 0 and 5 ukuleles. This one, I would give 3. And there are a few reasons for that. Yeah, it's better than a Waterman. I will say that right out. I would buy this over Waterman any day of the week, mainly because the action is right. So there is that going for it. But with the occasional rough seams, with the sound not being fantastic, with the really tight spacing, and with its current price of nearly $50, this would not be on my to buy list. If the price goes down again and you can get this in the $30 range, then maybe we're talking again. Even though it includes a really decent gig bag for a plastic ukulele, still it would not be my number one place to go. Again, if you've bought one of these, there's nothing to feel guilty about or anything. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly serviceable. But again, with all those other little considerations and its current price point, this would not be one that I would ultimately recommend to most buyers. I would recommend some other models, which you can probably find on the UkeGuide page at ukeguide.info. All right, thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.